and welcome to a short video to show you how to use the HTTP callout policy in Gravity.io. Okay, so let's first of all head over to Gravity, and you can see that we've got API management here. We've got a number of APIs, but what we're going to do is create a new one. Okay, we're going to actually use the v4 policies, and we're going to call this policy HTTP callout. Give it a version number and a quick description. This is a test. Okay, I'm going to use the REST API proxy, HTTP proxy, and let's pick an endpoint. Let's pick a context path, which is HTTP callout. Perfect. And let's pick a target URL. I'm just going to hit the echo as my target URL, which is the main URL. I've got lots of options here, but I'm just going to go ahead and validate my endpoints, and now validate my plans. Okay, so that's that API created, and let's do save and deploy. So first of all, let's make sure this API is up and running. So I'm just going to head over to Postman, and you can see I've got the URL there of our new API, and we can do send, and it's bringing back the echo, so that's good. Okay, so now let's go back to the API and go to policies, and you can see that you've got the flows there, but we haven't got any flows, so let's create one. Let's call that default. Perfect. Okay, so now we've got our flow, so let's first of all create a HTTP callout policy. So I'm just going to go into there. I'm going to look for HTTP callout. Now remember, what HTTP callout is doing is actually allowing you to bring in a second endpoint and that information from that endpoint into this API call. So you're actually doing like a kind of a two-level API call. One API call allows you to bring information from another API call and use that information to respond back to the initial call. Okay, so I'm going to use a get here, and then the second API call, I'm going to use the demo URL, which is what time is it. And what I'm going to do is that from this one, so let's actually just put this into the here, and you can see that it returns two fields. One of them is timestamp and one of them is date. So I'm going to extract those fields from that response and use them. So I'm going to let's do timestamp here. Actually, it's not this bit, it's actually this bit, sorry. It's context variables here. So I'm going to kind of get timestamp, and I'm just going to use that field to pick out the timestamp field in the response. I'm just going to do C timestamp. I called my context variable C_timestamp, and I'm going to grab this field out of the response that came back from that second API call. Hope that makes sense. Let's add another one as well. Let's grab C date. Okay, I'm just going to put that as date there. So that, hope that makes sense. I'm going to grab the timestamp and the date and put them into these context variables that I've created in my flow. Okay, and now I'm going to add that policy. Okay, so I hit the API, I hit the second API, I grab the timestamp and date, put them into context variables. Now I want to respond to the customer. So now if I just at this point save and deploy, what's important is that if I go back to my API, it's still not going to include timestamp and date because I haven't told it to yet. So it's still going to echo out the initial response to the Gravity echo. Okay, so now let's go back and add something in the response to grab that data and let it be added to the response that I'm sending out. So I'm going to use the JSON to JSON transformation policy. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of syntax in here, and I'll explain myself in a second. Okay, So let's just see if I can explain myself. So essentially this is a bit of a jolt specification, and what I'm doing is that I'm adding the variable cdate and timestamp, and I'm adding it to context attributes here. So I'm picking out cdate from the context and timestamp from the context and adding it to my response that I'm getting back from the echo command. Okay, so now nice and straightforward, just added that there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is add policy and then do save. Okay, and then deploy. So I hope that makes sense. What I've done is that I've hit my API call, I've hit a second API call, I return the response, and in the response I've added the data coming out of that secondary API call, and now hopefully my response back to the initial API call would include cdate and timestamp. Okay, so now let's go back to here and do send, and you can see here the cdate and timestamp has now been added. So in a really straightforward way, I've been able to hit one API call, grab the data, and then subsequently add data from a second API call and add it to the first response. Now, if you kind of extrapolate this and think, okay, how can I use this in a practical nature? Well, if you were looking at currency data, for example, somebody's responded where they want to find out the price of something in a different currency, then part of your API call could retrieve the price, and then as part of that secondary call you could retrieve the exchange rate on that particular day, make a calculation, and return the actual price in that currency back to the end user for a given day. Thank you for joining me on this video, and I'll see you the next time.